it all went wrong for Vincent Kompany's men in the end, despite a fighting chance of it, really. We looked at, obviously, how their form had improved over recent weeks. Burnley just didn't look good enough at what they were trying to do, did they, Dave?
No, and I think you're right about the state of the person. I think particularly if you look at those three teams, I think there's a lot of untried players in there in terms of whether they have the quality and the tested levels at Premier League level. And I think they'll have a better insight of some of those players that are in there that are up to it. I think there's some good, well-talented players in that Burnley team, the likes of Amdouni, Lyle Foster. I think they look really good. But then I think there are a couple of players in there that probably didn't quite fit the philosophy that they were trying. They were trying in terms of playing out from the back. They came unstuck a number of times throughout the season, really, and kind of pivotal times in matches when it just kills a team. In that moment when obviously it's there's slight things will happen in games that will decide matches, but at this level you can't really get away with individual mistakes as we've seen them make, throughout the season.
Do you know what? It's funny. Both of us were talking about, we saw Match of the Day kind of highlight this, and it's very true, but I wonder if there's another angle to consider, that Burnley are giving the ball away very cheaply when trying to play out from the back. And what's weird is there was so much talk about Vincent Kompany and how successful he'd been in the Championship and how this was a real manager to watch out for. I think arguably Burnley's squad is the best of the relegated three. And yet they couldn't get his philosophy to work, as you said. And it felt like it was more of an idea to play the ball out from the back rather than a coached system. And the amount of times that players would pick the ball up and no one was showing for it. I've watched Villa do it this year really successfully at times, where when they want to play the ball out from the back, there is always an option for the person on the ball that is the safe option. Now, okay, if a team presses well, there will be mistakes made in there. But there's some quality players in that Burnley side who didn't seem to know what their role was within that system. Is that indicative of Kompany maybe being out of his depth at this level, or is it more that the players just weren't up to his wavelength with what he was trying to do, and perhaps him coming down from a playing level at Man City's to play for a relegation threatened side just didn't really marry up properly?
I think it's... You could probably say it's a combination of two, but then you've got to remember, Kompany's very early on in his coaching career.
Yeah.
He's never coached in the Premier League before. This is a completely new experience and a completely different level. Let's be honest. You find your level, coaching, obviously from coaching in the Championship and making that jump up. It's always going to be completely different, and I do think it's a bit of both. And I think probably lacking the right personnel in that midfield area, and I think potentially in defence, the transition, it's they've been caught out a number of times. I mean, you look at the United game, obviously the goal that came from Anthony was really let them down, and when they actually played quite well in that game, could have gone on to win.
Yeah.
So I do think it's probably a little bit both, to be honest, if I'm being honest, and it's an experience that will obviously stay with them. They'll know what they need to work on. I think Kompany will have a better idea of what players haven't worked for him as well.
So that's what I was going to ask you next then. What does next season look like for Burnley? Do we expect them to come roaring back to the Premier League? Because they were so excellent in the Championship last year. Do you think they'll stick with Kompany? And do you think we'll see an immediate return to them? Or might this be enough to worry the Burnley owners to think that they might need to reshape a lot of it?
I think it'd be silly of them to look elsewhere, because we've seen how difficult it is for clubs that go down to actually make the jump back up, and really they should be really eager to keep some of those players in that team, because they've had that experience at the very top now, and if they can, obviously he's gonna have to look for a reaction. It sounds like it, to be honest. I saw his post-match interview, and it sounds like he's looking forward to having another go at next season and getting them back into the Premier League. And I just wonder if they can get back there again, whether they look to bring in a couple more experienced players that have got a bit of know-how. Because you look at the likes of, for instance, Luton. Look at what Ross Barkley gave to them this season. That bit of control in the field. I think that's probably what they need.